let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and create a session right now. I'm going to call this one Summer Rose. Now this song that I wrote this a long time ago, and I recorded a little demo of it. So I'm going to be using it as just a guide, just to get me started. Now, all I have is just a stereo output of the Logic session that I used to create the song. So I don't have the multi-track anymore, but what I do know is that I recorded it to a click. I'm sure my performance is off here and there, but overall it is pretty on the click. So I'm going to create this at 48K, 24 bits interleaved. I could go at 96K or something higher, but I'm not going to be doing anything crazy with plug-in processing, or at least that's not my intention. So 48K 24-bit is going to suit me just fine. Now when I'm saving this, I'm making sure I save this onto an external hard drive because I want to make sure that I'm going to bypass as many errors as possible when recording and editing in Pro Tools, and also just for organization. Now what I'm going to do is import the audio with Command-Shift-I. It's on my desktop, Sweet Summer Rose. I'm going to convert it so that it copies it to my audio files folder. And there we go. Let's go ahead and just take a quick little listen to this song, or at least the very beginning of it, so you can get an idea of what we're working with. Of course, we're not hearing anything. And you can see that the output of the track is not applicable at the moment. That probably means that my playback engine is correct, or is incorrect, or my I/O is incorrect. So I'm going to go set up a playback engine. Nope, looks like it's on my Audient ID14, so it's on the correct playback engine. However, the output of Pro Tools is not connected to the output of my audio interface. So I'm going to go set up I/O, and here's the outputs I have available. If I click on bus, I can see that the main output is not allocated to go out to a physical output. It needs to go out analog 1 and 2. So I'm going to uncheck that box, but then when I check it back again, it automatically connects the bus name main out to analog 1 and 2, the physical output. Now I click OK. There we go. And then that goes into verse 1. So you can definitely tell why I want to re-record this. There's a little bit of a weird kind of squelch in the guitar. My performance, I kind of drift on and off the click, even though I was pretty on for most of it. And then you can hear some weird little edits in there. So of course we're going to redo it. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a click track to make it so that I can hear how the music is syncing to the click. By putting it on the click, I'll be able to use the grid in Pro Tools to copy and paste or rearrange the song. Track, create click track. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a feel for what the BPM of the song is going to be. So right now, Pro Tools is set to 120. All I'm going to do is hit play, highlight 120, and then tap T along with the music to give me a nice idea of where the BPM might be laying around. I don't quite remember, so we're going to figure it out right now. So what I'm going to do right now is find the tempo of the song. By aligning it to the grid, as I mentioned, I'm going to have a lot more editing capabilities. I'm going to mute the click because that might throw me off at the beginning. I'm going to hit return to start at the very beginning. Now I'm going to hit spacebar or 0 on my numpad to hit play. And then after I do that, I'm going to highlight my BPM right up here. And then I can tap T along with it for it to kind of get a good idea of where that BPM is. You'll see the values change in the BPM. Here we go. So you can see I was hovering somewhere between 169 and 173. Let's just start at 173 as a good starting point. Now, before we move further, what I need to do is I need to make sure that I align the very beginning of beat 1 of the song with beat 1 of my grid. Beat 1 of my grid will always be wherever the big blue lines are on my grid. You can see them better on the click track down here. Now I also know I'm in 4/4 time, so I don't need to worry about the time signature. If I did need to change my time signature, on my ruler over here, I can right click and click meter, and then hit return to go to the very beginning and add a new meter, and then change it to 3/4, 6/4, whatever time signature that's applicable for your song. But this one's in 4/4, so I don't need to worry about it. It's already defaulting to 4/4. But I do need to find beat 1. And if you go to the very beginning of the song where this is beat 1 right here, you can see it's a softer transient. It might be a little harder to figure out exactly where beat 1 might be. So I'm going to use a different part of the song for where beat 1 is, where I might be able to find a harder transient. And that's going to be somewhere over here. Let's go ahead and find it. How about right there, right where the piano comes in? Right there, it kind of restarts, and that's on this transient right here. So as long as I have tab to transient on right here, what I can do is I can just click T to zoom in and tab. The more I hit tab, it goes to the next transient. So it thinks that the transient's right about there, and that might be just fine. Another thing I can do, if I go on my slip mode, I have to make sure I'm in slip. I'm going to play from right here, and right when it gets to the area where the transient is, or right where right where beat 1 is, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on the bottom right of my keyboard on my numpad, and that will create a marker. I can use that for a natural placement of beat 1. Here we go. So just by hitting enter, I made this marker right there. Now I know it's somewhere right there, which is nice because when I did tab to transient, see how it did it a little bit earlier, and it skipped this one. So I know it's about right over here somewhere. So it's probably right there. I'm going to hit B to break it. I don't need this marker anymore, so I'm going to hold Option and click it. Now I'm on my selector tool. I can double click and hit delete on this one. And we're going to go over why I'm doing this process in just a minute. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm making sure that beat 1 of any portion of my music is going to be at the very beginning of my song. So I'll use my grabber tool, move it all the way over. Great. Now, if I unmute the click, we should be able to hear it because the click is now going to be starting on beat 1. Same with the music. So we should be able to hear it in time with the click. And of course, if it's not in sync, it will start to deviate from the click. Now, a problem that's occurring is it might not be syncing to my click because my click is not beating appropriately. And that's because I have the conductor track on right there. So it's actually going to be at 120 instead of 173. Now, if I'm doing tempo changes, of course I can go ahead and use the tempo ruler, but I'm not going to be doing any tempo changes here. So I'll go ahead and turn off the conductor track. What do we have at 173? All right, now let's hear it. So you can hear that it's on at the beginning and it starts to deviate. And I can tell that the beat of the click is faster than the beat of the music. It's kind of rushed. So let's go to 172 now. Now, it stayed on beat a little bit longer than 173, but it still went off beat somewhere around over here. We can tell that it's just not quite exactly there yet. So let's go all the way to 171 now. But then we're off right there. But look how it went so much farther into it without being off sync or out of sync. So that means we're getting a lot closer. Let's try 170 now. So you can tell that I deviate in my performance from the click, but it definitely was on the click. It's always returning to the click. Another way I can test this is just by going to the very beginning, or the very middle of the song, and checking if it's synced there. So we're getting closer and closer. I can tell. Let's go ahead and take a closer look to see where things are getting off. But it seems like it's mostly on the click because it's being very consistent, but the whole thing needs to be nudged over. So let's go ahead and figure out where. Let's hear right where I say sweet right there. We can tell if we're on or off the click, if the click is too fast or too slow. So you can kind of tell that the click is kind of beating slightly after the music. So I'm going to return to the beginning. This might be a little easier. And on slip mode, I'm going to go ahead and just move it just a little bit up. Let's see what that does. It's a little bit better. That's kind of nice right there. Let's check the end. My arms, right against the sun, oh, and cool with the stars in my hands were so weak, so dry and cold, fumbling for. Now that's a little bit better. We're kind of on there. You could tell definitely this song needs to be redone because I'm just a little bit off. So I can tell it's still slightly off. But it seems like the BPM is correct. So that just means I probably just need to move the clip around to make it align with the grid a little bit more. And I got a couple clues here. See how there's a big transient right here, but the grid line is right next to it. That's kind of the same for this one as well. Maybe that one a little bit, definitely that one. So I think I need to scoot this over to the right just a little bit. So I'm just going to give it a nice little scoot. I held command as I did that in grid mode, and that kept it in slip. Let's go ahead and check and see if that feels a little bit better. Wow, that feels a lot better. So now, if I return to the beginning, notice how I had to move it over a little bit. We're going to go ahead and just put that back. I can do it in slip mode, make it nice and easy. Okay. All right. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is see how I have it all the way at the beginning and I chop that section off. The reason I did that is because as I'm trying to figure out what BPM it is, if I move the BPM, if I change the BPM value, notice how as it fluctuates, I'm just dragging up and down, the beginning always stays the same. Let's put that back to 170. The beginning point always stays the same. So beat one of my song and beat one of Pro Tools are consistently lined up. However, if I move this over and see I'm still in beat one of the beginning of this portion of the song because I'm on the grid, but watch what happens when I change the BPM. It does move the beginning of the song. So we don't want that. That's why we had to make sure that it was all the way at the beginning, like this. But now that it's like that, I can just move this over to another place where beat one is, still perfectly on the grid, move to slip mode, and then my trim tool, and trim it back out. Now the rest of the music is going to be in beat with the song because I never changed the placement. So all of this that I just dragged back out, that should be in beat with the music. Beautiful. Okay. Now I'm going to make sure that I just trim this up. Maybe we'll start right there. I just hit A to delete everything to the left. Now I can use my grabber tool and I can move this over. Let's go ahead and give it 2 bars of or let's give it a couple bars of breathing room so that I could hit record from right here. And that 2 bars of lead time will just give me plenty of editing space if I need to make any sort of fade in or anything like that. So I'm feeling great about where the song is at the moment. What I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be finding the sections that I want to take out of the song or perhaps the sections I want to duplicate. For example, now let's listen from right here. So right here, I'm going to put a break. And then right here, I'll put a break right there, right on beat 1. Now you can see if I double click, let's put my main meter on bars and beats. I can see that this is an 8-bar section, and so is this. This is an 8-bar section. So I have a 16-bar intro right now. Perhaps I only want it to be 8 bars. There's different chord progressions, but I can still use this as a great example. I can double click, delete that section, use my grabber tool to move it over, and then listen to it that way. So clearly there's a bad edit right there. Another way I could have gotten that back over, I'll undo that, Command Z it, is if I've made my in point and my out point on the grid, it's perfectly been cut on the grid. If I double click that section, go to shuffle mode, if I hit delete, it's going to take this out and move this all the way to the end of this clip right here. So go ahead and watch. Excellent. So it did the move for me. So I just skipped a couple steps, which makes it quite easy. Now, if I zoom in, I'll go to my slip mode again. And how about my trim tool? And I'm going to trim this back out just a little bit to like perhaps right there. Now let's go ahead and listen to that. So that's nice. That's a good way for me to be able to find out if I want perhaps to change this to a 8-bar intro instead of a 16-bar intro. I'll probably actually end up keeping it as a 16-bar intro, but it's just a good example of what I'm going to be doing throughout the song. I'm going to go through it and find out all the sections I want to delete or perhaps double up. And that way I can hear it before I begin recording new instruments such as guitars or vocals and such. That way I have the arrangement sort of figured out, lined up. I get a little bit of an audible treat to be able to hear what's happening before I do all that work. As I do that, as I go through and delete sections or elongate sections, I'm also going to be making markers. So how about right here at the very beginning, I'll go to my grid, making it easier to put those markers precisely on grid points. And let's go ahead and put one right here. And I'll call this one intro. So I hit enter on the bottom right of my keyboard. I have a numpad. And then where's verse 1? Right there. So then I'll click right there, and then if I don't have a numpad, I can either hit FN and then return on my keyboard, like if I'm using my laptop, or I can just see the marker lane right here. I can just hit plus on the marker lane, and that will give me a place to put verse 1. And then I'm going to continue to do that all throughout the song as I'm editing it, getting it to the place where I like the arrangement. So now what I want to do is I just want to make it so that instead of it being bar 1, bar 2, and then bar 3, I want this to be bar 1. So I'm going to go to Event, Time Operations, Move Song Start. So I can say that I want bar 3 to actually move to bar 1 or be renumbered starting with bar 1. There we go. You can see now we're in -1, 0, and then bar 1 right there. Of course, I do need to move that marker back over. Now this way, this is bar 1 in Pro Tools and in bar 1 of the actual song itself. It's just a lot easier to communicate and a lot easier to navigate in Pro Tools if I have everything situated as it should be. But from this point on, I can go through and I can take out sections I want, renumber or maybe elongate them or double them up, put my markers in place, and then start to figure out, hey, I like the way this sounds. I'm going to go ahead and start recording guitars now. Save me a little bit of time that I don't have to do any guesswork after I do the recordings. I like going into my recordings knowing exactly what I'm going to be doing. That way I don't have to worry about making mistakes that are going to affect me so much in the future.